Okay, here we are. Thanks for the patience and sorry for the technical problems. We have here with us Renata Koch from Empodera Clima and Bo Guerreschi from Don't Worry. We are starting now the table on women and gender on this track on social economical factor. And at first, I will give the floor to Renata. Hi, Renata. Nice to have you
Well,
here.
thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Renata, she's from Empodera Clima, and in a few she will explain the activity of Empodera Clima. So the floor is yours, Renata, for your speech.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending this session. I think it's a really important session. Women and climate change is such an important issue that is not talked about enough, I feel like. So it's great to be here and talk about this with the Bond Warrior organization as well. And I'm looking forward to the discussion. So let me just quickly introduce myself. My name is Renata Koch. I'm from Brazil. I currently live in Rio de Janeiro, if you know where that is. And I work in domestic politics at the British Consulate in Rio. But here I'm representing Empodera Clima, which is an educational platform about women and climate action based in the US-based nonprofit Care About Climate in the United States. So basically, Empodera Clima means empower for climate in Spanish or Portuguese. And our goal is to raise awareness about how the climate crisis affects women and girls more than anyone else, more than any other group. So it's really about just making sure that people, but especially young people in Latin America, in Africa, in the global south overall, understand this issue and have the tools in terms of education and access to resources to access this information and then become advocates in their own, whether it is in their local communities or international governments or at the UN, for example. So that's a little bit of the idea. And the way that we do that is we have a database available in 4 different languages. So we have content on gender and climate change available in English, Spanish, Portuguese, and French. And again, the goal here is to make sure that this type of educational content is accessible to people all over the world. And it's one of the things that for me as a Brazilian activist, something that I noticed a while ago was that a lot of these topics, although they are talked about at the UN and the climate conferences, there's still quite a big gap when we talk about language barriers. So, for example, in Portuguese, there wasn't a lot of content being shared or a lot in the media even about gender and climate. So it's really our effort as a youth-led NGO to spread the word on that. And besides that, we do a lot of advocacy work. So attending these kind of events, of course, this was a challenging year because it was all online, but I think we've been able to do well just in terms of talking to other young people and connecting with other NGOs in different webinars or online conferences. So that's just a little bit of a summary of Empodera Clima. Again, super happy to be here to talk about this important issue. And hopefully we can kind of finish this year with a little bit more of climate momentum for 2021 and COP26, because I do think it's going to be a really crucial year considering everything that happened with the pandemic and how it has exacerbated gender inequality, both in climate change, of course, but in every area that we can think about. So yeah, thank you so much for having me and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Renata, and thank you, Empodera Clima, for being here. And now I'll give the floor to Bo Guerreschi to present Don't Worry.
Yeah, hi, I'm Bo Guerreschi. I'm the president and the founder of Bo Worry NGO. And the Bo Worry was born 6 years ago, and for real support to the victims of gender-based violence. And also research how showed the last year the violence more cruel and violent. And in the new generation is becoming an energizer over they need to help claim climate change. In fact, just 2 days ago in Southwark Court, you know about the diet or Illa for asthma attack. Is it talking about they confirmed with the victim that she died for the climate. So this is really the good start and the first comeback that it could be really a story for the future. We Bongor is a real, so we don't just talk, and we collaborate with some more politics in around the world, because we are in the world of war. We are more in England, in the United States. We are moving now the headquarters, international headquarters in the United States, and we follow the victim from the lawyer, psychologists, and wherever they need it, even the refugee house or what they could, they don't know where to go. And because a gender violence is not really, well, everybody talk about it, but it's in very few people and don't understand really what's mean. If it's a climate, if it's a human, it's both of them. There are always a human, between them. So it's a murder as a other man for a climate and for the women. Even for the women, we don't have just a women. We have all kind of people. Every day, we fight against domestic violence, rape, child violence, witness violence, range, born bullying, psychological violence, economic violence, women and child traffic. And we collaborate with the more organization for the effect of the climate. That is one more pressing issue, because everything is changing, day, but even more this year with this pandemic, like Renata said before, is a point that now it should be together. You have to study for the effect of both sides, okay? Because we have to think, like I said before, that the basic is there always the human they produce there, even for the climate, even for the people. So we have to thinking about that. And what I want to say to the victims in both sides, but I can talk to the climate, I talk to the people, that when you need some help, before to move in thinking, you have to find the person that could believe and help you, because you wouldn't ever know what kind of reaction will have your family in front of the violence. If you take this girl earlier death, about the victim, the last victim in UK, you can consider that the mother was really sure and fight for that. How many men or how many families that could stand and believe in that and fight for that? Really, it's the first time that I heard that, but probably I missed something. But I think it could be the start to change more, because the women are the mother of the planet, and women are the key to solving the climate change crisis. So to create the change, we must be in the war, and to create the change, we must be in the system. But we have to be part of finding the better way to. What am I thinking? That's why the war is born at, because it's easy to talk, it's hard to work for. So we have to understand that violence against the planet, against the community, people, animals, is because it's inevitable that involves all sections are involved. And climate change and community must be considered like the gender inequality, like Renata said before too. The community is hoping that it'll be okay in a few years, but it's just a hope, because I think that will take more than 50 years to start to see some, evolution in the positive. While for the community will need more than 5 years to start with the serious economic for, because its economic is another really big section for that involve even balance, even climate. So I said that community animals have the same problem that are food. And economic is the first formula of the gender, the community in the same times. Why they go, why they create for the planet, everything just for money. So the economic is just one section, is a big, big problem to resolve. So we should talk about, and we should involve everything in all steps. Now, at the 2020, we cannot step and we cannot talk in separate way. We have to talk and we have to be involved and we have to work really all together in all different countries, because doesn't make it, we have so many problems with everything. So in 2020, I listened and again the same stupid, sorry the word, but about races, people, religion, so is how you thinking about the climate with sex, is it where you come from, the climate is all words, what we're breathing, what we live. So I think that this, this table is really important to make people understand what will be important to collaborate all and in all work together, even separately, do what we do for, we do more for the human, they can do more for the climate, but we have to talk more and more and more about those very big problems. This is my introduction to this table.
Thank you very much, Papa and Renata. That's a beautiful introduction to warm us up and to introduce you. And I'd like to address a few words that kind of popped up with education and mothers of the earth. If we can go into how the leading role of women in climate at the moment, how we can talk about what kind of education we're talking about. This one body you're talking about. Sometimes scientifically, I think you can see a body, right? The earth like a body, and we are part of that body. It's like the systemic macro, micro, and also using the metaphor. If it is a whole system body and we are part of it, then how do we lead the way as mothers of the earth in being female, and leading that, for example, with education, as you're both highlighting. Feel free.
What I think, I'm sorry, is when you talk about infrastructure, you talk about something that is real, is concrete. You don't talk about human. When you talk about education, you need, I call it human infrastructure first to create an infrastructure, work. Because if you don't educate people to understand, to respect, and if they don't introduce more thinking in a different way to see how science, psychology, you said about health, but about psychology. So how many women die just because they don't respect or they don't have the real cure from other people or where they live? How many women die just where you have to think it's just a different or a bad situation where they live in, or what they eat in, or what they drink in. We're talking about water. Water is 80% of our body, so you don't have to. How can you live that? So women is like all humanity, but women is the mother was everything. Everything birthed from a mom, like you said. If you come nature, planet, human, but is always life. So if you don't respect the psychology and the body, if you don't respect where you live, and if you don't make people to understand that the planet and yourself, they live together because they're same stuff to go through, you will never go find a way to resolve really the big problem that exists. For me, I don't know, Renata is more introduced about a climate change, but no.
No, I mean, this is such a great point, and I love that you have that perspective of gender-based violence, because that's such a big thing. Like, if we're talking about, just as one example, with Latin America and the Caribbean, with the pandemic, there's been double the cases in reports of domestic violence and murders of women and girls during the pandemic, just because there's lockdowns and people are at home. So I know that in Brazil and I think 5 or other 6 countries in the Latin American region, it accounts for, I think, 80% of the cases globally. So we can't not talk about that factor, right? When we're talking about women in climate, it correlates to all of that. I like to say that it's kind of a crisis within the crisis, right? We're talking about the climate crisis and the pandemic, but the reality is that all of these regions already have the highest levels of inequality in a bunch of different areas, right? So we can talk about corruption, about human rights violations, like refugees, just a bunch of different risks and vulnerabilities that affect that, and then climate just exacerbates that just a ton more. So I completely agree that considering all of those contexts, we have to talk about leadership in a way that we can't really solve the climate crisis, or any crisis for that matter, if we don't have equality in that sense. And I really feel like women need to be there, because if we're thinking again about just women playing roles in their communities, they're key to securing food, resources, income for their families, right? So how come decision-making spaces are talking about all of these issues, economic wise, social equality wise, and not have the people that are facing this more than anyone else every day, right? So I think when we're talking about women and climate, and I know that a lot of my peers and a lot of young people are confused, right, when we talk about women and climate change and how that correlates. But I think the bottom line is that there's more vulnerability that's exacerbated because of the climate disasters, the environmental disasters, the droughts, the floods, all of that happens in every country in the world. And you talked about health a little bit also, Bo, which I think is great, because health and water, because again, in Brazil, I think it's almost 30 million women do not have adequate access to water and sanitation. And that affects everything else, right? So we're talking about health indicators, education, income, well-being. So what Saul was saying about education, I think it goes hand in hand, because if we want to address all of these very horrible issues that we have, inequalities in all of these areas, we need education from the policy leaders, from the decision makers, but also the people at the forefront of those issues. Because with Empodera Clima and with the youth climate movement, kind of, we're very privileged and engaged in the international climate movement per se. We're in the attending the COPs, attending the UN events, but that's not the reality of a lot of the people, right? Of the indigenous young women in the Amazon, for example. So how can we get those people to those spaces? And I think a lot of that also starts with education, bridging the gap and bringing access to resources on that, and making sure they have the tools to be in those spaces, because they have to be there. But the thing is, there's a lack of opportunities and privilege, basically. So I think that's kind of the correlation. And yeah, I always like to say that education is at the core of everything. If we don't have that, we're not going to be able to solve the climate crisis or anything else for that matter.
Thank you very
Well,
much. Thank you.
so may I say something? May I say something? May I respond to Renata?
Of course, of course.
Renata, you say that we cannot resolve everything right now. These are correct, because we, it's climate planet, and the problem of the climate change started a few years ago, that they really started to talking about it and to thinking and to realize whether the problem or not, and what the problem that could be. So, but we have to. So step by step, what will we do it? And it's about how we to do resolve. If you're thinking, you said about pandemic, okay? Do you think it put the difference from Africa, India, and United States and Italy, okay? From United States, there was a culture, and they think that they didn't understand the importance to take care of their health, and how it was dangerous in that period. The climate, so the air, okay, was a could bring in against people. The other side, they didn't have the resource. So you see, you find and where they lived in that period. So they didn't have what the United States or the Euro country had. So they had more problem and more people and more die than they are. Plus, they have more die for kids. So we have to pray that the kids, the future, is you are there, you'll be my age, and there will be people that can listen you, can follow you, can change in that country. So in this way, Bongoria created and start to move in with so many women company, CEO, Italian and international, from Paraguay, from United States, from all the countries that they want to be part of, and go there and create something there to first against the violence, okay, the counter violence, the justice. The other side is to bring women and first and men to, to keep them what they have like a goal, water, handcraft, agriculture, and bring them. You have to take care of that. That is your goal. that will be your life. And that is everything from a mother nature. What that is for me. So we could really work together, because you have a country that we don't have, but we can shift directly. So, and we could really bring it to make people understand how they have to work for it, even wherever the country they are and wherever the language that they talk. We have to do that. So, but Warwick created this because he want to bring culture and agriculture and handcraft really to start to create the economy inside there, and the other side use the economy that they create from a mother nature to the other country.
Thank you. It's all fascinating angles to look at it, because as you said, health and women and climate change, and it goes so much beyond just the gender. Renata, you mentioned or referred to women being key essential parts of being able to nourish ourselves with food, with water. I wonder if we can expand a little bit about that, and also how you referred to, Barbara, the nourishment and the health is beyond the body. Yes, we talked about the body of Earth, our body, and keeping it healthy and balanced and nurturing it. And that's regardless of gender, but also how bringing awareness, which for me is equal to education. It's just a different way of looking at the education, is to bring the awareness about the effect on our psychology as well. It's so much more beyond just physical health. And the climate problem that we have is, people are only just starting to begin to taste it, even Corona, as a result of it, on certain levels. But it's even that is not in the consciousness of the people yet, or let's say even accepted wholeheartedly as something that's really related to the climate crisis that we're in. So having said that, I wonder, what is the best way right now that we can think of bringing that awareness? Of course, the initiatives you two have taken are, I think, excellent examples of that. How can we amplify and multiply that? How can we bring it to more people? What is your suggestion also for viewers, what they can do in their individual worlds to bring that education, to spread the tools and to empower people?
We have to educate it first, the people that's supposed to, like a teacher, when they talk to the kids. So they have to talk them from the beginning, even when they're kids, and they can start to make them understand about food. When they're in the kindergarten, they start to talk and they say, "No, I don't wanna, I don't like it." But you have to, for me, you have to start just a little step in the beginning. It's just for what you have. Then growing up, make them more understand, and you can see growing up and the different other culture, when they start to talk each other and they start to produce the different problem and start to talk more and more. The young people have to start to really consider it in a serious way, to talk to other friends, because we can talk, but we are considering it the old. Yes, they talk about, but they won't understand that even they know more than us. I said us, and I said at my age, okay? But for me, that from the kindergarten, you can stop step by step in the family. It has to talking about what is important, and you have the people start to understand more that the nature give you everything to take care of yourself. And if you don't take care of the planet and water, like you said, is everything will be destroyed. Now we have a really the pandemic give the more sucker and destroy what it was before. So even before we had really few few things, because after the pandemic they start to thinking that the problem is from the climate, the air. They didn't thinking and they didn't realize that the air going around so they could keep it on board. They start to thinking Italy first and then go back all of that. And now they have a really, really, really big problem. But for me, if we will start, even if we can go to have a really big convention together, even in the States, in all country, but talk and make realize with some concrete, like it could be our project, if you want to be part of that. We are thinking we are really happy to do that because more people are be part and it's like is an ocean, So for me, we can start from the family and the family teacher and kindergarten and make them understand that women, you have to respect them in all way. For me, even we are all of that, but women, sorry, is the worst in the whole world. So
yeah, no, I just wanted to comment. That's such a good point. I feel like, yeah, it has to start young, right? I mean, I always like to think about like the school curriculums and how they don't address climate a lot of times, or even just environmental issues. But you're right. I think it starts even before then, right? Where we have to talk about feminism and gender equality and being human and those kind of aspects before we even go to all of the rest of the social challenges. So that's a really good point. And to add, I think there's two main areas where people can advocate and get involved. And I think one of them is, again, education, as and everyone else. And I think it's not just about formal education and about going to school and taking those classes, but there's also soft skills that are really important. And just as one example, there's something called the Girls 20 Summit. It's basically the only platform for young women to engage with the G20 group. And each year they have one delegate per G20 country, one youth delegate, one young woman. And I had the pleasure of being the delegate of Brazil. And basically, one really amazing thing that they do is they give negotiation, advocacy classes, and skills and policy writing. So all of those soft skills that are really important for young people, not to just learn about climate, learn about feminism in class, but also become activists and advocates and grow up and become the leaders of tomorrow, basically. So I think that's a really good point that we don't see enough, especially in developing countries. And I think it's important to address. And for everyone that's listening, I think one of the good ways to start is definitely getting involved in a local organization in your community, or creating one for that matter, or creating a club in your school or university. I think there's all kinds of ways that within your community you can identify which issue is the most important in your area. Of course, I think we're here talking about women and climate, and I definitely think that the climate crisis is the overarching problem that we have in the planet, because if we don't solve the climate crisis, we can't really solve anything else in terms of public security or human rights. So it's really about identifying that key issue in your hometown and acting on that. And then just another thing I wanted to add, just because I feel like a lot of times people place the responsibility just on individuals. So especially on young people, it's about you have to solve the climate crisis, you have to recycle, become a vegetarian, do all these things, which are great. And I'm a huge advocate for individual action, but I think that there's also a responsibility for addressing climate change on multilateral institutions. So here we're talking about the UN, states, countries, civil society, the businesses, so the private sector. And I think it's important that each of these actors lead on their respective areas and then forge partnerships and collaborate to make efforts or to create solutions that are sensitive to the needs and experiences of women. This is what we call the gender sensitive policies. So I think overall, just what I'm trying to say is having greater connectivity between international, national, and the local levels is really important so that we can have more presence of women in those spaces, but not just more presence, but that we can have the leadership, right? We don't want to just have women in those spaces, but have women in leadership roles in those spaces and being integrated in the policy world, in policy making. So yeah, I think it's kind of combining both, combining individual action that you can take joining organizations like Empodera Clima is one example, but you can also do that by pressuring the local leaders, voting, those kind of activities I think are really important as well as a combo kind of to help solve the climate crisis.
I think, yeah, I agree with everything with you. Now I ask you a question. How can we make people understand that you don't have to think it more about economic while you can have economic science, so money and business, okay, without destroying all nature? How can you do it? Because you see, you talk about before a pandemic, but you see that this pandemic is one of the reason when in this year our planet start to move like I thought that was the strongest justice to make people understand that the planet is tired. You know, for me, is the stronger really justice that they can have a people, because now the planet is talking. Now, in this way, the people has to understand the word from the planet. So if you said start from the beginning, so from the kindergarten, from the kids, and before to from the family, in the same way we make people understand that even you don't see what you have, you are rich because you have to produce, you have to use, can make it, you know, your economy. And the other side, you have to make people understand that you don't have to destroy nature to have more money, but you can work with nature to produce more money. You know, I'm an economist either, so if I thinking that all the world try to have don't use the justice, where they go against justice, okay, and they have a crime every time to have more money, but you don't have to, because in your hands, in all country, all people, you have everything. You have life, so you have to keep it. You have planet because you need it, your life. And this both section has to work. So make people understand, make company understand. And I think that if you wanna, because next June I will be one of the speaker leader in UN in New York for the summit 2021. But I wanna bring. I was supposed to bring the economy, you know, evolution from a violence. But if you wanna, in that month, we can organize something and ask UN to listen and to put all together. Because I think the UN, because we are registered inside a UN, even EU, but we have to have, you know, more people and more important or more famous than us, then use their word to make other people to understand, because even we talk, no one no one know us. One, if you make people understand that they have a real name, they make, you know, people start to understand. It's like that. If the actor talk, they start to. If I talk, maybe not. So if you want it, we can really have the, you know, appointment a month, and we can create something with UN. So if we can find a real an agreement, I can introduce and do something more for me. I don't know you.
Yeah.
Even though
Yeah, no, just for, yeah, no, this is such a good point. The question, right? Like, how do you make people care about the environment, or how do people have empathy, right? And that's kind of at the bottom line. And I think there's a really good book.
people understand
Yeah.
that the economy, the money is not destroying the planet.
Yeah, exactly. No, there's a good book about that that's called Capitalism versus the Climate by Naomi Klein. And it's a lot about explaining how the current systems that we have in terms of consumption and production simply do not match what we want to achieve in order to have a sustainable and healthy planet in the next 10, 15 years, or even 30, 50 years. So it's not sustainable, right? It's not going to happen. That's a lot of what the Paris Agreement is for, is trying to diminish that temperature rise. But it's about the people as well, right? If companies are producing, and people are consuming that at a crazy level, it's not going to help the environment in any way. So yeah, it's a difficult question. I don't think I have a direct answer to that in this moment. I think education is kind of at the bottom line, trying to make sure that the future leaders, the kids of today, understand that. And then when they had the companies, when they had the UN, they're gonna be able to have that kind of background thinking about the future, right? But it's more of a long-term thing, like a generational thing. And hopefully, with, as you said, with more famous and renowned people saying those things over and over, whether it is actors, musicians, or just UN leaders saying those things, I think it could be a way to kind of have this generational shift of understanding why it's important to care about nature. Because I agree, we did lose that a little bit over the past few years, with the growth of capitalism and the businesses. And I think at the bottom line, if you look at the studies, it's not bad for the environment. It's not bad actually for the economy or for businesses in the long term to go zero carbon or to go net zero or something like that. If you look at the long term, it's actually a really good thing. But the thing is, people want to look at the short term, right? At the profit of tomorrow. So that's kind of the idea. People don't want to invest in solar energy or more renewable kinds of energy and just climate means, just because they want to think about the short-term profit. And by people, I mean the businesses and the corporations that lead today. But that's the thing. If you look at the long-term studies, it's better in the long term. It's going to be good for everyone in the long term. So I guess it's just a matter of making sure that people understand that. And that's why I think education is one of the main ways to do that.
Why don't we, why we don't show to the company that there is a way to do that? That could be the answer. And step by step into 2021, they can really see what is the problem, how is the resolution to do that for me. So
thank you. I think what it sounds to me is kind of unilateral at the moment is understanding the why. Why should this matter to me? Why should I care about it? Apropos care about the planet. But in general, we're talking about holistic ways of looking at it, top down, bottom up, using as many ways and platforms and stages to amplify and multiply the reach of the information, so that people actually, rather than feeling overwhelmed by the news of the reality that we are aware of, that we're trying to administer as far as possible, in every way that's possible. But it's also really to multiply it, right? To amplify it. And educationally speaking, I mean, and the involvement with the UN, I can say, examples like you ladies, or Renata specifically, with these educational programs is one way that's bottom up. But then if you're able to go, Barbara, to the UN, and I can say there are initiatives within the UN and the UNFCCC. I'm involved with ECOS and ACE, and there's a lot of forward movement in terms of going top down. So if we continue to do top down, bottom up, plus what you just said, and we go to the corporations and say, have no fear. You will not lose your job, you will not lose your income, but we will connect you to the solutions that exist, or those who can help you find and build and fill the void and help transition. This will be, I think, easier to palate, more palatable for the general public. And I think this opportunity, just we're here talking about gender and in the climate world, and also female leadership. But we have here Sam Sheka Moi, who also is working in the world of gender and climate. And I'd like to invite you to introduce yourself and join the conversation a little bit as we continue. Sam, would you like to unmute yourself?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Sam Sheka Moi from Sierra Leone. I've been working on gender and climate change. When we talk about this topic,
just your sound is a little broken. Just speak a little slower, maybe, so we can understand clearly.
Okay.
Thank you. If you can start again where you're
Hello.
from.
Can you hear me?
Yes, better now.
Can you hear me clearly?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone. My name is Sam Sheka Moi from Sierra Leone. I've been working on gender and climate change in Sierra Leone. I'm the founder of Community Health. This topic is one of the most important things that we have to look into: gender and climate change. Women are experiencing climate change differently as gender inequality persists around the world, affecting the ability of individuals and communities to adapt. Recognizing the important contribution of women as decision makers, stakeholders, educators, carriers, and experts across sectors and at all levels can lead. Women have proven to be leading the way towards more equitable and sustainable solutions to climate change across sectors. Women's innovation and expertise have transformed lives and livelihood and increased climate resilience and overall well-being. So why is it important? Why is it important now? What can be done to achieve gender equality when it comes to climate change? Across society, the impact of climate change affects women differently. Women are often responsible for gathering and producing food, collecting water, and sourcing fuel for heating and cooking. With climate change, these tasks are becoming more difficult. Extreme weather events such as droughts and floods have greater impact on the poor and most vulnerable. 70% of the world's poor are women. Despite women being affected by climate change, they play a crucial role in climate change adaptation and mitigation. Women have the knowledge and understanding of what is needed to adapt to changing environmental conditions and to come up with practical solutions. But they are still largely untapped resources. Restricted land rights, lack of access to financial resources, training and technology, and limited access to political decision making often prevents them from playing a full role in tackling climate change and environmental challenges. Women are the most vulnerable set of people when it comes to crisis. During COVID-19, women have suffered sexual, gender-based violence, physical, and then psychological effects. So it takes leadership, it takes international body, it takes organization, grassroots organization to train volunteers and communities, because we cannot succeed to combat gender-based violence and climate change within our communities without training volunteers. These are people who can go within hard-to-reach areas, giving them the knowledge, training them about gender-based violence and what women can do to combat climate change. Because when it comes to decision making, women have been restricted. When it comes to political decision, they have not been given the opportunity to serve in major offices. They have suffered all sorts of gender-based violence. But it is high time now we train volunteers, we speak to them the languages that can understand. Because when we say to people, using the media, translating the languages, which people can, the ordinary person can understand, like in the hard to reach areas. When you talk to them the language that they can understand about climate change and the role they can play to combat gender-based violence and the climate change during COVID-19, because during the Ebola crisis, we have seen in communities where women have been the most affected people, like in Sierra Leone here, we have seen Ebola survivors who were struggling to find their feeding, to see that they sustain their communities and also educate their children. But after the Ebola, they have left behind. They did not have the opportunity again. And then presently, some of them are doing farming, but because of this climate change in Sierra Leone, which is affecting us, and then these women have become more poorer. And then it is time that we educate them. We come to the world, we tell people, use the media, train volunteers, tell them about climate change, tell them that women are the most vulnerable percent of people. And then when women take the lead, when women are given more opportunity to serve their communities, we can see a better economy, and then we can see a growth in national economy. So thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam, wherever you are. And I'd like to say, isn't it wonderful that humans develop technology? At least we can communicate, especially during these times in these amazing ways. I mean, with all due respect, I don't know how many of us were born to be broadcasters, but we're learning. So thank you, everyone, for your patience. At least we get to spread the word, spread the awareness, and educate people through initiatives like these. And Sam, thank you for bringing the voice of other genders, speaking for general genders and equality at large. It's interesting that you bring in really, I think, one of the most central parts to why women in climate change are critical, which is the I dare say, caretakers of the home. Now, this could be old world, new world. We're in transition now. We're rewriting the story. We're moving forward. That's this whole narrative becoming, multiplying actually at the moment, and may continue in this way so that we have more and more opportunities like these. And whoever is watching, please share, do watch parties, all of us participants as well, now and later. These conversations are only beginning here or continuing here, and they shall not stop. We will forever have work to do individually, collectively, and the understanding of our part really in that bigger system. If the structure that we are used to is really okay, so the baby comes through our body for sure. It's dependent on our body, but we do need the support of one another. It takes a village to raise a child. The responsibility, the different way that we perceive life through our life experiences, and then being given the leadership roles, whether it's top down or bottom up, as you said, right? Every day there are small things, no matter who we are, where we are, how much money we do or don't have, that we can do. But once we understand this whole system's thinking, that we're part of something greater and grander and larger, there are people who have researched this, who do have good news, as you said. We don't need to fear that our quality of life will drop. On the contrary, the mathematics say that there are enough of us out there, and enough is what you're, I think, referring to Earth saying, kind of like, I'm not well. And just like when your body is not well, my body is not well, we need to work together here, also as a species, but also as part of that bigger system. So Sam, thank you for bringing in another voice on this topic. Would anyone like to add and respond in the meantime, direct response at all? Please unmute yourself.
Well, I can say something to Sam. I agree, with you. And I want to say that you're correct. Is your body doesn't work, but sometimes because you're a psychologist, brain doesn't work like it should be. So in the same way, your body start to be sick, has some problem. So, and about Sam, when he was talking about political, well, he touched really, really, really the bad point. But you can start to okay, all women now they start to have the words because we are growing up. The community is growing up, and before than me, other women, but in different way. Now they realize that is everything at their close. But the politica has to think in that is the poor is not a crime. And when you mean that you are unable, to be okay, to be poor, are not a criminal. Okay, you're just poor. So and if you help someone, doesn't mean that you are you don't have to, or you are the classic, when you're thinking for the community, everybody say that you are just the last of the people that should talk. While we are inside, and like us all said, this is a start, and we have to be really close. So could be really work together, because now is, we start to talking about a really, really big problem that will be involved in the violence, creating violence too. So what you're thinking that is the catastrophe, they start from the political, and the humanity has to introduce the resolution for me. So we are inside of the system, and we have to work inside of the system if you want to change the system. Even we could have people against us, and people then will be agree with us. Well, I know every day, so I know exactly what I'm talking about, but you are inside really the system. So we are not just me, just Renata, Soul, and Sam. Now we are inside of the system, and for the same point, in a different way, for 360 degrees. So we have to stay close and really work from now to the future for me. And from some concrete, step or a solution, or working always more, even so. Don't think to leave this group.
We're here, we're here.
You will be part of it right now.
I'm looking forward. Renata,
So,
did you want to respond? Yeah.
Yes, thank you. No, just to add, I think Bo said a lot about what I was thinking, but I love that we're having conversations from such different perspective points of views, just because that's kind of what we need, right? If we were talking earlier about how to bring people together and make people care, and this is kind of how we do that, right? We have those conversations and discuss how we can take each of our expertise or our community context, our cultural context, and come together. So I just want to say I really love that. And I love that we're also talking from a perspective of ecofeminism, which is really kind of what you were saying, Saul, in terms of like considering the woman as being integrated to nature and being of nature and nature being of woman as well. So having those kind of intercorrelations, I feel like a lot of times when we're attending those like high level climate conferences, they don't talk too much about this, about like going back to like the nature side of it or like the feminism side of it. So I love that we're talking about like going back to the roots of everything, and I think that's super important. And that kind of reminded me of this term that I don't think I mentioned before, but I think it's super important to just throw it out there because we're talking about women and climate, which is intersectionality. Just because the idea of intersectionality is having the discrimination being based on a variety of different factors, right? So we're talking here about gender, of course, and about sexism, but of course there's racism and there's other issues that are overlapping in that sense. So I think it's really important to bring this because what Sam was saying, and just in terms of going back to the psychological side of it, I think intersectional environmentalism is really important for us to take into consideration because it's about understanding the different levels of underrepresentation. So it's not just women, right? We're talking about indigenous Black women, Black communities, LGBTQ plus communities, rural women. There's just all kinds of people that are more affected. So it kind of goes back to what I was saying about different perspectives and us being able to contribute in considering our livelihoods and what we've experienced in our lifetimes. So just wanted to throw this out there to add to the discussion, but I think it's really awesome that we're able to have these conversations, especially at such a late time of the year, because I feel like a lot of people start forgetting this, and it's important to, as I said, I think in my introductory statement, not lose momentum, right? So that's kind of at the bottom line that I just wanted to add.
Well,
Sam,
when
do you want to respond? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No.
Please, please do.
No, I just want to say that Renata talks a word, just to say the feminist, that's mean equal from man to woman. Not like everybody said that the feminist is just for feminists. If the people could start or start to understand the real words when they pronounce and when they talk, that will be just the first part for me. Because everybody say that we are not feminists. No, you are feminists if you respect men and women. So because the how you say the mathematic is math is everything inside the word, because all word is a number. But in the same way, the name that you created, because math is just a number that you produce where and how the man, woman, or a human woman want it. So now the most or a CEO or AG are women, and if you see, is everything is changed because so many women start to be at the power, even the company. And they don't see it the same way with the men, just not because they didn't want to grow up with economic inside of the company, but but they use it, the math, okay, and then thinking like economy in a good way. So they don't destroy, they create it like the women are. For me, Sam, you are man. You are the only man. So say you.
Sam, would you like to respond?
Two women.
Hello.
Okay, we can hear you. Carry on.
I did not say the question clearly.
Oh no, just
Hello.
if you had anything to add or to respond. But when you do, please feel free to unmute. I will just say that the conversation that we're having here, including thank you very much for bringing up the clarification of the word feminism. I think we don't need to go deep into it, but I do think that especially when it's women and the climate change topic is not about gender. It's not even just human, right? It's just about us all taking our part and understanding we are all connected. So in this way, the feminism has like a stigma or a
Respect.
association. What was that?
Respect.
Yeah, I think exact. I can't even choose a better. That's the word that I think really.
Okay.
Anyway, it's indigenous, right? Renata, you're from Brazil. I work directly with the tribes. I also work with the women in the tribes. As a matter of fact, of course, right now I mean, if we want to talk about climate change and women in leadership, and one of the biggest, most immediate challenges we have right now that the scientists are talking about is actually in the Amazon because of the acceleration of deforestation. And I know we have many other problems in the world, not to mention hunger and all the other things. But if we go at the rate that we are right now, it is apparently just a few months away before we pass the tipping point of the forest itself. And who is at the front of that? It's a female. Sonia Guajajara and Celia and many other people, but there's also men, and I've been working with them under the leadership with APIB and COYAB and other organizations that are trying to come together to amplify the message. It's interesting that the women are at the forefront, and I will add to that and just say that the men are calling on bringing women to leadership. It's even in the tribes who have been preserving the closest way of the basic way that humans can live in harmony with nature. And from their voices, their examples, that's where I think when we talk about feminism, and I think it would be an interesting topic, a woman is a wombed man. It's a man, human with a womb. It's a woman. So we're all men, but woman is a man, is a human with a womb. And feminism versus chauvinism has femme, and it's also quite, standalone. So where do we bring, for example, equalism and humanism, or initiatives like he for she, which came out of the United Nations? So I'll leave that. I'll hand it back to you.
I agree with you. In fact, if you, I don't remember what I'm saying. If you say, okay, it's, you said is feminist is correct, and I love you the word that you use it to put together and explain better than I did with feminist. But and I tell you something, if you listen in the word saying everybody is against women violence, okay, and sometimes or most of the time that they use it violence to gender based on gender, and they use it like a synonym women, violence against women, but it's not correct. So we should start to make people understand even this violence against women is a part of violence of the gender, but it's not synonym. It's because people sometimes, or most of the time, they talk. Do you see this the TV show? And those people they talk and talk and talk, and if you listen, they say you know exactly what you are saying because you don't say anything correct. Or what they used to sing, well, like most of the popular, they try to, or they want to understand, or they want to listen, but they don't understand exactly what it is. That's why, like you said, most of the men wants like a leadership or a leader women, like a Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris said there will be a big point of the revolution or the history. The political history, country will change, the community will change. In the United States, when I lived there, so many races from them, even from Italian to Italian, that I said that you're really stupid. So with the Kamala Harris said that one woman includes three kind of country. That is beautiful because she is one of all the community that need to have a word. Even the secretary is a native, is an Indian native or something like that. She's a really, I read just this morning, and all women, all different country, and all people that have a different culture, different life, but they are all women, really, really, with a great education back of them, with a bit of feedback really, really high, so that they can make and understand the high people, the power, and the community. Because sometimes it's very hard to make the community understand when you talk and you use very big words. But you have to think because that they have the problem every day. But if you see with the pandemic, okay, so many people die. But did you see how much the animals start to have back their freedom to be free to move to? They took their place back. That was beautiful to see that TV, the animals. They could walk around and no one had to be cruel against animals. Because cruelty against animals and against the planet is one element to say that it's a predator. If you read it, the McDonald's psychology is one of the triangle. So it's really, really, I love that I was watching that Animal Free. And they birth so many animals, so many cute animals. So this is they should make the people understand how big and great and beautiful it could be the community with the planet clean, or better, more clean than we could do it. For me, that is what TV show that I was watching really, the animals free. I never see that. I have 56 years old and I never see animals free like in the last month in TV.
Could I add? Okay.
Good, yeah.
Great. Thank you. No, thank you so much, Sal, for raising that question about feminism. I think, yeah, it's important to just like take a step back, right, and explain what that is, or make sure that people understand we're talking about feminist solutions to climate action, or to climate change. It's the idea of equality, right? And the term ecofeminism that I was mentioning earlier, I think it's a good way to kind of explain that, because it's a lot about understanding that in the past or even now, both nature and women have been characterized or delegitimized as inferior, as passive, and that's kind of this correlation about animals and women, and that's kind of where the vegetarianism movement goes as well, but that's another topic that we can discuss later. But the idea of ecofeminism is that historically those groups like nature and animals and women have been put in a passive position, or have not been heard as much as they should, because of the patriarchal society. And basically what patriarchal society means is having not just it's not equality, it's just having, it's not men in the lead, but it's having women in positions of vulnerability, in positions that they don't have a voice, basically. So that's kind of the idea. And I think you mentioned he for she. I think there's a lot of great movements out there, and Sam is here, and we have so many men in Empodera Clima as well that are engaged in the feminist movement and the gender equality movement. And that's the thing, we are not going to be able to solve climate change or to have climate justice if we don't have men and women come together, right? It's not just about women talking about feminism. So I do love the idea of having men as allies in those movements, and we need that desperately. So it's just a matter of understanding why that's important. And there's many studies that I could pull up later, but that show that when we have women in government positions, for example, or in Congress, national parliaments, they're more likely to sign international treaties that are taking action against climate change, or environmental friendly treaties or policies. So that's quite interesting as well. It relates back to ecofeminism and what we were talking about the relation of women and earth and nature. So that's why it's important. And I saw in the news just the other day that the city of Paris, I think that the city hall of Paris was fined for having too many women in their city hall, charged millions of dollars, of euros in the sense. And I thought that was quite interesting, because that's the thing, right? People assume that feminism in a way is women taking over or men not having any leadership at all. And that's not the thing. It's that historically men have held these positions and women have not been on the front line of policy making, basically. So this is the idea. We need more women at this time, just because historically that hasn't been the case. And we've seen the impact of that. We've seen the impact that it has had to climate change, right? So I think it's about thinking that feminism, it's just a matter of having equality, because we haven't had that ever, basically. And it's at the way we're going, it's going to take at least 50 years for us to even reach a point where we have some kind of equality in terms of wage gaps or economic equality. So I think it's just important for us to clarify that. So thank you for bringing up that question in the conversation.
I see. May I just say something? We were talking about political, but if you're thinking that some years ago, some years ago, nominate a woman, it would be just a pink quote. Remember that they have a woman. We have to be a woman inside the parliament. We have to be a woman inside, and we have to be. Or we want to have a woman inside because there was an equal party. But if you're thinking now that it's not like before, but now they want it because they could prove that the woman and all women that are nominated, they're better, or better, they accept to work with men and other women. So in this case, I permitted to say that we had to make women to understand to female that they have to be women to be part of this world, because most of the time we have a female against women. That is really lying, but there is. And why we have to make women to understand that, or female to understand they are women, and this is their power to be with men to create the future. Because if you still creating just female in yourself, you will kill all the work or the future or education or the culture or the math that we produce for the future, even for violence, even against violence, even against for the climate change. So we have this problem too. Even men, they work together, the women no. Too many women are against women. So I accepted to say that too many females are against women. And we have that problem to reach. So but step by step, we can prove it. That women, they can work together, even how old they are.
Thank you. I think it's important that we raise it in the first place and have clarification. I am also hearing us talking about transitional and intergenerational and international and interlateral and the other word you said, Renata, where I think it's multilateral, really, where, looking at it. And I think it's actually a refreshing conversation. That it's important to open up and have, especially when you're speaking now, the last comment. There's also intergender racial, I don't know what the word would be, women with women, men with men. There are kind of like the macro, micro, the microcosm of, us not getting or trying to be above or above or above. It's kind of like in our mental structure or societal norms that have been passed down intergenerationally. And now, again, I think it's due to the circumstances of the world, the technology we've developed to be able to communicate and exchange thoughts and ideas from different perspectives of the world, influenced by our local and our global now emerging, times, that the seeds that we're talking about planting, the education, that's what I'm hearing us also talk about. And it's intergenerational. So lately I've been speaking to people and we joke about it's about this generation. And then what's this generation? It's not the children who are born now. It's anyone who is alive now. We have decades of work to do together, multilaterally, to reorganize ourselves, to reorganize our societal norms, to communicate better with one another. Even the exchange of those solutions we're talking about is a new form of communication, exchanging knowledge and wisdom. But most importantly, I think, as we come to kind of close this conversation, is collecting the real news, the real facts, holding on to all that work, as you said, as our forefathers and ancestors have done. And let's learn from our mistakes, where we've come from, acknowledge where we are now, but then also envision where we want to go together. And then, and then take the steps forward that we do have at our disposal, but just need to organize it and ourselves a bit better. So for final responses, and I'd love to continue this, I'm sure it can go on for hours. We can also continue chatting and seeing how the audience or any viewers now or later watching the recording have anything to add or say. I look forward to hearing from whoever would like to participate. Go ahead.
Well, I tell you one thing before then you said that all generations have to work together, right? Well, I tell you that we have to educate that this community or this generation, even though it kind of gender out, but they have to educating, because we are come from a generation that never could thinking about this situation. They couldn't understand what you're talking about. If you say climate change, what it is. If you say is a climate, is a violence, or is a cruelty, even violence against a basic gender isn't the same. So we are talking in, and we are to educating them, okay, the old generation, like they call, to the new generation, that they're all the same, but it's the different thinking that we produce our where we go, and we will be our goal. That's why I said we should talk it more and more, because we could work out of this conversation, of this TV or technology, but we could work more together to make people understand what our words means and where we want to go and why they should follow us or follow all the people that will take care of gender, equal gender, okay, and the climate. And what does it mean the same?
Yeah, so just to finish, I completely agree with everything that was said. I think this has been a great discussion, again, to end the year on a good note, to keep the momentum on that. And just to mention, because I know that we talked a lot about intergenerational equity as well, and Saul mentioned the work of the UNFCCC, which is the UN Climate Change Secretariat. And I just wanted to mention a couple ways to get involved. So there's YUNGO, which is the youth constituency of the UNFCCC, the UN Climate Change. And they have a gender working group, actually, that I'm one of the co-leads for. And it's really great because it's youth up to 35 years old working to empower young people to formally bring their voices to those UN spaces. So next year, of course, Italy, along with the UK, is hosting COP26. So I think it's a great way to get involved. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to go to COP, but it could be get involved in the conversations throughout the year. I think 2021 is going to be a really, really important year in terms of climate ambition and climate action. So there's platforms, there's ways to get involved, such as with Yungo and with empoderaclima, which is the initiative that I'm leading. We've been working also to foster conversations around women's leadership in climate action and in climate spaces mainly. And so yeah, so if you want to join, you can take a look at our Instagram, which is just at empoderaclima. We have a website as well, empoderaclima.org. I encourage you to be involved. Doesn't have to be with us, but with any NGO or organization or friends that are passionate about climate action. I think it's really important. We can't really not be involved anymore. I think the next 10 years that we have up until 2030 and the 2030 agenda with the global goals, I think it's a really key time for us to keep talking about this. So I'm really glad that we're able to keep having these conversations, and I'm available if you want to reach out and don't know how to engage, because I think that's kind of the thing, right? It's hard sometimes depending on where you're from, how to access those spaces, but there's always a way to do that. So I definitely invite you to do that. And yeah, just thank you for this really enlightening and inspiring conversation.
I propose something, if you like, all of you. In 2021, what we don't organize in the United States or UK or wherever you wanna, big meeting, okay? And you bring violence against gender-based violence, one, climate change, violence against climate change, and an economy in the middle. So you can show the three sections, and you can show and you can introduce really the other people and make understand what they produce, why they are close, and what they are meaning separately and together. What are you thinking? Aren't you crazy to propose that? No.
Room for others to jump up. Yes, yes, please.
Okay, so we can keep close each other, so we can really organize maybe in June. Okay, just the pandemic will and we can do it really.
Well,
as maybe wherever your country, where, because I'm moving to New York, so I don't care where you want to go. I take a plane and I'm coming. So
I love
we
it.
can organize to that. Sam, you're too part of that.
Sam, are you in? Are you in?
Hello.
Joining
Yes.
next year?
Hello, can you hear me?
Can
Hello?
hear you. Yes, yes, go ahead.
Okay, yes. And I want to thank everyone because when it comes to gender and climate change, especially the feminists, these these are some of the challenges that mostly men, like myself, I was in the rural area 2 weeks ago when a 19 years old boy asked me, Sam, you are a man, why are you advocating for women in climate change, gender, so women can have equal opportunity? So why are you not advocating for us, the men? I said, wow, so these are some of the challenges that we are facing, especially men. When you go to some communities, they'll ask you, you're always talking about men, okay, women. But yet still, we try to bridge the gap. We all know that whenever someone stand in a public talking about gender equality, the first thing that came that some people will think about is only about women. Yes, but we need to talk also about the men so that they can realize that the men can also play a greater role so that we can get the equality. And I so believe that because when it comes to gender equality, women cannot able to do it alone. It takes men also to be part of them, to be part of society. Because and most of the areas that I've visited, men, they are decision makers. You can't take it away from them. But now, since men have taken up the responsibility to engage community, telling them that when we talk about feminism, we're not talking about women only. We talk about collective responsibility. We talk about collective people, especially in society, when they can come up and advocate for equal responsibility in society. Because when you see the women, they are vulnerable. You can't take it away. Because most of the rural areas, they don't give opportunity to women to take a leadership position. Mostly, they said men, they are okay. Women are always there to accept what they have decided. See, these are some of the things. But now, since men are involved in advocating for gender equality, especially in climate change, telling them the role which men can play. Example in agriculture and business, where they can bring income in communities, where they can bring development in national development and also in international engagement. We can see a better world, we can see a better society. And then the feminists, if we want to grow, we need the volunteering, we need the media, we need people to come together. We need community engagement, youth engagement, like in schools, universities, in rural areas, city, anywhere. We talk to them the languages which they can understand better, especially some of them who can understand the local languages. By telling them that the feminist has a greater role. Men can play a role in ending gender-based violence, and also men can bring joy to the poorest, the poor women who are still lagging behind, especially in the fight against climate change. Gender and climate change, we have to put it together. We have to understand that men and women are always together in the fight against climate change. That's it. Thank you.
Sorry, we can't. You're on mute, darling. You're on mute. If you want to unmute yourself, we didn't hear you. We can't hear you there. Can you unmute yourself? Sorry, yeah.
Hello?
Oh no, yeah, Sam, one moment. We heard you. It's just
Oh, okay.
Because Sam talking
better.
about
Now I can hear you.
Yeah, Sam, about talking about because I lost so many words when we were talking because it was something about the line of it. I don't know. I couldn't hear all the words, but he said that about the women and that he needs school education because I lost part of it. Sam, we come from where now? Just to understand the problem in the country. Sam. Where are you now? Where you come from?
From Sierra Leone. Hello?
Yeah, okay.
Sorry for bad networks. I'm from Sierra Leone.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
He come from the country where we have to really big problem, and the government doesn't give money. The money from the country, they give from like an American English, but not that country. They don't have so much. They don't help so much of the community. Yeah, they are the money that the fund from another country. They leave them. That's why we will do that too. They call us somewhere, but I don't have so much money to do that all of that in the world ones. So yeah, they have a really big problem there.
And that's another reason why these kind of webinars and sharing spaces are really important. It's also educational in itself. And unfortunately, we have to wrap up for today. So I would just like to point out also, referring to what Sam just said, there is the aspect that you mentioned earlier about outreach being able to be done with influencers of different kinds in order to amplify the message outwards. And people like us coming together and merging energies and missions and steps we're taking to support each other, even knowing about each other's existence is a big step in that direction. And I think yeah, that's where I like to say we're in a critical situation. We need a critical solution, and we need a critical mass to make it that. We are the critical mass. We just need to find each other, coordinate, synchronize, and synergize our work, and then move forward continuously together. And I think that's what COPs, UNs, UNFCCCs, all of these initiatives, Youngo, etc., are really instrumental in facilitating that. And like us now bridging that, as you said, Sam, bridging so much that needs to be bridged internationally, intergenerationally, intergenderly, all of the above, is also bridging between those who are more active and those who want to be active and don't know how and where to be. So thank you, everyone, for coming today. Please, after this, we wrap up on the live. Can you please go into Climate Social Forum, go into the broadcast as we post this live, and in the comments, make your links to your direct sites available for your initiatives. And then from there, we can all both be connected and also introduce this and expose this to anyone else who's watching after this.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you so much. I hope to see you again.
I look forward to it.
Thank you.
We'll make sure of that.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
I will add to the thanks. Thank you very much for Renata, Bont, and Sam.
Honor. Thank you to the Climate Social Forum.
Oh yeah, right. Thank
Yes.
you.
So nice to have this, especially without our COP. See you soon.
Just a last message. If you want to join the other discussion, the last of the day on migration, please join. The only thing, it will be in Italian and translated into English. So if you want to come, you are very welcome.
I
Bye.
will always share that. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.